You ever get the feeling that some political speeches are like trying to follow a recipe written in hieroglyphics? We're tackling one of those head-scratching moments today. This article you sent in about Vice President Kamala Harris and, well, let's just say her recent remarks have sparked a bit of a debate.
Debate might be putting it mildly.
All right, maybe a full-blown internet firestorm. So, to set the scene, picture this. Harris is on Roland Martin's show, Black Star Network.
Right. Hey, I'm with you.
And Martin's grilling her about Trump's focus on crime, especially in those cities, those big Democrat-led cities that seem to be at the center of every political debate these days.
Right, yeah, that's a familiar theme.
And Harris, she starts talking about constellations.
Constellations, like the ones in the sky.
You got it. The ones with the stars and the myths and the whole cosmic shebang.
Hold on, is this a metaphor we're talking about?
It's more like she took a metaphor, launched it into space, and then it got lost somewhere in the Andromeda Galaxy. I'm not kidding. She goes on for a while about it. At one point, she says, and I quote, "I talked to somebody once who said, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation. What does it show you?" I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I get it. You're trying to be profound, but someone needs to hand me a telescope because I am not seeing what she's seeing. Help me out here, expert speaker. What in the political strategist playbook says, when in doubt, talk about the cosmos?
What's fascinating to me isn't just the content of her statement, but the reaction it provoked.
Oh, tell me about it. I think I saw every variation of word salad and space cadet trending on Twitter that day.
Exactly. It's like the moment she uttered the word constellation, everyone assumed she'd wandered off into a lecture on astronomy.
I even saw some folks speculating she might have been, shall we say, partaking in some extracurricular activities before the interview. Like, I enjoy a good cup of herbal tea before bed, but even I'm not seeing political manifestos written in the stars.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the, shall we say, unconventional phrasing. But if we can hit the pause button on the memes for a second and try to take a step back from that knee-jerk reaction, there might actually be a thread of logic to what she was saying.
Okay, I'm listening. You're going to have to walk me through this one because, honestly, I'm a little lost. What could she have possibly meant, even if it came out a bit jumbled?
Well, remember the context of the whole interview. Both Harris and Martin were talking about this very specific tactic of Trump's constantly harping on about supposed voter fraud in cities with large black populations. And, well, it's a tactic that many people see as, let's just call it what it is, pretty blatant.
Yeah, it's not exactly subtle political maneuvering.
Right. So imagine Harris is trying to find a visual way to illustrate this pattern for the viewers at home. Like, she wants to show how these seemingly disconnected incidents, accusations about Detroit, Philly, Atlanta, they're not random events, but rather form this, well, constellation, a deliberate pattern crafted to achieve a very specific political objective.
I never thought about it like that. It's really interesting how a simple phrase can spark so many different interpretations. So she's not actually talking about the night sky, but using it as a metaphor to draw attention to what she perceives as a deliberate strategy.
Exactly. It's almost like she's saying, hey, folks, look closer. There's a bigger picture here that you might be missing. And it's worth noting, this whole constellation metaphor, whether it resonated with people or not, directly ties into both Harris's campaign and Trump's.
How so?
Well, they're both crafting narratives around these themes of crime, urban decline, and the ways those issues are portrayed in the media, and often that portrayal has a very clear racial lens.
And that's where things get really interesting, don't they? This isn't just about one slightly offbeat remark from the vice president. It actually shines a light on much larger campaign strategies at play.
Strategies that intertwine, sometimes clash, and yeah, you could even say try to outshine each other. Kind of like constellations, I guess. It's like they're both looking at the same political map, but highlighting completely different regions. And that brings us to a really critical point.
Because this isn't just some theoretical debate, right?
Yeah.
This has real-world implications.
Absolutely. We're not just talking about rhetoric here. This has very real consequences for voter turnout, especially within the Black community.
Which leads us to the, dare I say, elephant in the room.
Or maybe the donkey.
There's already a lot of talk about this so-called enthusiasm gap among Black voters going into this election.
Yeah, a gap that could have a huge impact, particularly in those key battleground states.
Exactly. So, expert speaker, put on your political strategist hat for a moment. How much of this do you think comes down to Harris's communication style? I mean, is it a case of her message getting lost in translation, or is there something deeper going on, a real disconnect with the people she's trying to reach?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And there's no easy answer. On the one hand, Harris is operating in this environment, this political landscape, where everything you say is analyzed, dissected, often twisted to fit a certain narrative.
Oh, yeah. Remember those headlines you were talking about earlier? Word salad, Galileo Harris. Those things have a way of sticking around even if they're not totally accurate.
Exactly. And that makes it really tough for anyone in politics, but especially for someone like Harris who's trying to address these complex issues of race, inequality, and political strategy.
It's like trying to explain quantum physics to a room full of kindergartners. It's a tough sell.
You got it. But on the other hand, we can't just dismiss this as media sensationalism or anything like that. We have to acknowledge that this isn't the first time Harris's communication style has come under scrutiny.
You're right. There have been other times when people have criticized her speeches, her interviews, for being, well, a little hard to follow.
Exactly. So it's possible that it's not just the media's interpretation. There might be a genuine communication gap that needs to be bridged.
So it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And finding that sweet spot, that way of connecting with people on a deeper level, that's crucial in politics.
Absolutely. And the challenge for the Harris campaign, and frankly for voters, is figuring out whether this communication style, which can be a bit convoluted at times, will ultimately hinder her ability to get her message across and connect with those voters she needs to win.
So it's about cutting through all the noise, the distractions, the viral moments, and figuring out if the message is actually getting through. And that takes us right back to this article you sent in, because this isn't just about Kamala Harris and her, well, interesting choice of metaphors.
It speaks to a much broader issue that's shaping the whole political landscape.
Exactly. In this hyper-scrutinized world we live in, how much do these off-the-cuff comments, these gaffes, really matter compared to, a candidate's actual policies, their record, the things they've actually done?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Are we so focused on these little sound bites, these viral moments, that we're missing the bigger picture?
Because, let's be real, this isn't just some form of entertainment. We're not talking about who can deliver the best one-liner on Twitter. This is about choosing the leader of the free world.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? We're not just electing a spokesperson. We're choosing someone to lead.
Someone who has to make tough decisions.
Yeah.
Someone who has to grapple with incredibly complex issues.
Exactly. And that raises a really important question for all of us. Are we making those decisions, those crucial choices, based on a candidate's actual track record, their policies, their vision?
Or are we letting these verbal slip-ups, these moments of awkward phrasing, overshadow everything else?
It's like we're so busy dissecting every word, every comma, that we forget to look at the bigger picture.
We get so caught up in the performance that we miss the substance entirely.
And that brings us back to you, dear listener, because this whole deep dive, this exploration of political metaphors and cosmic comparisons and the fine art of communication, it's not about deciding whether Kamala Harris is the most eloquent speaker on the political stage.
It's not about crowning a winner in some political debate tournament.
It's about giving you, our listeners, the tools to navigate this crazy world of political discourse.
It's about asking those tough questions.
Like, does this constant scrutiny of every syllable, every pause, does it actually make us more informed citizens?
Or does it just turn everything into a game of gotcha, where we're so busy trying to catch politicians messing up that we forget what really matters?
It's like we're more interested in the missteps than in the destination, more focused on the stumbles than the path forward.
We're so quick to judge, to criticize, to jump on the meme bandwagon.
And in all that noise, in that rush to point out every imperfection, we risk losing sight of what truly matters.
The real question isn't whether a politician speaks with the eloquence of Shakespeare or the precision of a brain surgeon.
It's whether they are effective. Do they walk the walk? Do their actions align with their words? Are they making a real difference on the issues that matter most?
Those are the questions we should be grappling with.
Because at the end of the day, a flubbed metaphor is far less consequential than a flubbed opportunity to make a real, lasting impact.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. Pay attention to the words, sure, but don't forget to look beyond them. Look at the actions, the policies, the long game.
That's where the real story lies.
And as always, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.